Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news on the start of another week, and we are starting to move into more transfer stuff, even though there are 3 games left for Manchester United, including a massive Europa League final. There is a press conference for Ollie coming up at lunchtime which we'll react to, but we're starting off this morning with a couple of, Romano's spoken about the centre-back situation at United, right-back situation mentioned by Ornstein, but we're going to start off with this story from The Athletic. I mean, look, I'm just very grateful that we don't have to talk about Messi to United, which was yesterday some story from The Sun about Messi, and I'm sure Messi probably will maybe leave Barcelona, but he's not going to come to United, is he? But we're going to start off with this story about Lingard for KANE transfer swap. Now, this is coming from The Athletic, and I believe it's a West Ham correspondent from The Athletic, because I've never heard them talking about Manchester United before. And what they're basically saying is, obviously they've got West Ham interests at heart, but they're saying that Manchester United increasingly looking to use Lingard in a swap deal. They don't want to loan him out again, and they feel that, there's not really a place for him back at the club, so it's about maximising Lingard's value. Some people think he's 20 million, some people think he's 30 million, but United looking at ways that they can use Lingard as part of a deal for themselves, which is something Romano mentioned a year ago on this channel about with a lack of money in the game because of COVID and everything else, players become money, and swap deals should be being used more and more, even though we haven't seen it massively. I think we saw it with Barcelona last year, didn't we, with Pjanic and Juventus, but the mention of Harry Kane is quite interesting. I mean, look, it's not the first story I've seen about Harry Kane, that Manchester United, again, linked to Harry Kane this summer, and Harry Kane looking to move from Spurs. I'm sure there is potentially a deal there that could be done with Harry Kane. I'm sure he potentially wants to leave Spurs when you look at the season they've had and who their next manager might be. It may not be a big name. So what is Spurs' future if you're Harry Kane and you want to win things? But Manchester United and a striker, I mean, I don't want us to go back down this road, really, because we've got Cavani for another year. I don't think Martial's going to go, and Greenwood's a player that can play up front as well. I think the right wing situation is really important. Sorry, John, I just want to pull you up on something. It's a news show, John. It's a news show, and I know we've only done it for about 4.5 years, but the morning show is a news show. And what happens with the news show is that I read the story out, tell you where it's come from. I don't pluck it out my arse. It literally comes from somewhere, and we discuss it on a fan channel, a news show. So just for John there, who still thinks that I wake up in the morning and write these stories out and make them up. Good one, John. Anyway. But, yeah, so in relation to Harry Kane, I don't think Manchester United will sign Harry Kane. I really don't. And I think that Lingard, as part of a deal for Harry Kane, would be, well, we'd still need to spend £120 million on Harry Kane. So I think in relation to Kane, and let's just update on Haaland as well, Dortmund are going to be in the Champions League next year. Their owner or CEO, Michael Zorc, or whatever he's called, whatever his role is, has come out and basically said that, Haaland will be at Dortmund next year, and I think he will. And I think if United really want to get hold of Erling Haaland, and I don't think this will happen, but if United wanted to get hold of Erling Haaland, well, look, Cavani stays for another year, Greenwood develops, Cavani goes next year, and next year is when Haaland's 70 million release clause comes in. So you could probably get Haaland for under 100 million when you take into account Riola's fees and everything like that, when really he's probably a £200 million striker. So United will be looking for a striker in a year's time, not this summer. And to be honest with you, I mean, Harry Kane's just a ridiculous amount of money. And how would a Lingard for Harry Kane swap deal work? You still have to spend over £100 million on Harry Kane. Why would you do that now? I mean, it's the same thing as Ronaldo. Why would Manchester United bring in a striker now when you've already got Cavani staying for another year, and you've basically promised to Cavani that he will get game time? Because ultimately, Cavani wanted to go back to South America for family reasons. He wants to be back home. The reason we've got him to stay is because, look, there's a massive crowd here next season. Manchester United, you're going to be playing. You're our number one striker. You're not going to go and spend £120 million and bench Cavani. So we won't be buying Harry Kane. And I think that we should move on from that. However, it is interesting what's happening with Lingard, and that's why we've put swap deal on the thumbnail, because Lingard being used as a swap deal is quite interesting if something like that developed, because the point is that Leicester like Lingard, West Ham like Lingard. There's talk of Dortmund and Lingard. And I think that Lingard brings you money in as well. So Lingard's a key thing. I don't think Lingard will go to the Euros either. So I think it is a deal that doesn't need to wait until July. And it'd be nice to use Lingard. And I say use Lingard. He's an asset. He's not he's not a bit of rubbish. He's an asset. He's had a fantastic 6 months or 3 or 4 months at West Ham. He's increased his value, and he should be playing first team football somewhere. So that's the most important thing, is that Jesse deserves to go and play first team football somewhere. At United, that's not going to happen. So I don't want to. I treat him like, he's an asset. He is a player that's a value to us, and I think it suits all parties that he moves on. Now, look, if Dortmund want Jesse Lingard, then I think Lingard and Dortmund would do very well. And I know people say that's ridiculous, but I think Harry Kane for Jesse Lingard is ridiculous. I think Dortmund for Lingard as part of a Sancho deal is not as ridiculous as you think. Does it fit the profile of what Dortmund do? Not really, but they do buy players who are over 25. Does Lingard in Germany make sense? Probably not. I think Lingard probably wouldn't fancy Dortmund for more than Dortmund wouldn't fancy him. And obviously West Ham. Look, I think Jesse might fancy himself to be a bit, arrogant as this sounds. I think Jesse might fancy being a bit higher level than West Ham. I think Lingard might fancy Leicester, and that's interesting because would Leicester do a swap deal? I mean, there's probably about 5 players I'd take from Leicester. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think swap deals are a good thing, but I think that. We'll have to just see how that runs out. But ultimately, there's value there. And it's interesting that swap deals are being mentioned with him again. Why are we linked to another superstar when we need multiple options for the pivot in midfield and options for right back and centre back? We will get Kane in the winter transfer window since we're linked to him now, says Subbo. And a lot of people saying obviously they'd like to do to get Rice as part of that deal. But I don't know. I don't know whether that will happen. I think with Declan Rice, if Chelsea want him, he'll go there. Does Lingard want to go to West Ham? And then you've got to work out how a swap deal would work. So we'll see on that. But I certainly don't think that there is a. I certainly don't think that a swap deal for Jesse Lingard is ridiculous. But, with Harry Kane. Although, can I just say this story about Messi over the weekend from the Sun? I mean, look, Neil Ashton is our PR guy at Man United. He used to work at the Sun, and you just think, why are we being linked to Lionel Messi? Having said that, if the Glazers want to get fans back on side and sell a few shirts, you're definitely going to do that with Lionel Messi, aren't you? Also, let's talk about Fabrizio Romano. This fits in with what happened yesterday. We're talking about Sven Botman at Lille yesterday. I think a lot of people watched him over the weekend for Lille as well, because I saw a lot of people saying, he's reasonable, he's not bad. Just a little bit of summary on Sven Botman. I've not seen loads of him myself, but 6'4", left-footed, 21, Dutch, about to win the title with Lille in the French league, and a player that United have been linked to. Speed-wise, I think that's the big factor here, because I think most fans, myself included, realise that we do need to have somebody with a bit of pace at the back. I don't think he's snail slow. I think he's quicker than Lingard. It's whether he's quick enough, that's the question. But Fabrizio Romano saying that they have scouted Botman, Manchester United, and they've also scouted this lad who's going to go from Juve to Atalanta, who's been on loan there this season, Romero. But they are not the number one priority. So that's probably quite an interesting thing, that we are scouting players of that sort, but they're not the number one priority. Who the number one priority is, I don't think Romano's committed to who United's number one centre-back priority is yet. And that's the interesting thing with Romano for me, is does he know who our number one priority is? And is it Varane, which is quite interesting. Opinion about Lookman from Fulham will suit United's young and good. McSarins from Norwich is back up right, but also everyone wants Kane and nobody looking at Son, says Anup. Did you see the other petition for the government with many hosts from Sky Sports like Neville Rio signing? They forgot we did it already with United, says Anto. Yeah, a few people mentioning this petition. I mean, look, from what I've seen of it, it looks like a great idea. It's for a football regulator, isn't it? Look, all I ever talk about on this channel is unity in the fan base, and we were not approached about this. So to see other fan channels and other footballers promoting a petition is absolutely fantastic. But disappointing, really, because we've got a massive platform. We were the channel that got that petition for 50+1 from 30,000 to 100,000 in a couple of days. I'm sure this petition that Gary Neville's sorted out will hit 100,000 very easily, and they obviously don't need to use the United stand, but we weren't approached. So I don't really know anything about it. A football regulator, sounds great to stop Super Leagues in the future, but nobody else pushed the 50+1 apart from Manchester United Supporters Trust, the Red Army, and a few United fans in the United Stand. And to be honest with you, I think the 50+1 thing is more important than a football regulator to me as a Man United fan, because I want the Glazers out. I want fan ownership of Manchester United. A football regulator doesn't necessarily bring that in. So I think it's a great petition. We weren't asked to be involved in it, so I can't really give you much about that. I'll have to have a read about it after I've done this show. But the 50+1 one has hit 100,000 because of you people anyway, and there wasn't a lot of, I don't know why there wasn't a lot of support from people like Gary Neville and Rio Ferdinand for something like that, because I think the football regulator idea is great, but none of them wanted to push the 50+1 one, and that to me is more important as a United fan, because we want change of ownership at our club. I don't ever want to see anybody going into the European Super League again, but this football regulator thing feels like it's more about stopping a Super League again, whereas I think for United fans, we don't want a Super League, of course we don't, but for us now it's about getting the Glazers out. So I don't have much to say about that, because we weren't asked to be involved for whatever reason. I don't know why, but if you have seen it, then certainly sign it, and I'll have a read about it and talk about it probably on tonight's show or at lunchtime. We need democratic reform. Independent regulators do not really answer to anyone, says Mick. And rumour that Tom Heaton refused a new contract as he's looking to be a backup for Henderson next season, says Super. Yeah, we spoke about that before. Also, Heaton probably will come to United, whether he be the backup for Henderson or not. A free transfer and Sal David De Gea, that's just Glazonomics, isn't it? Really, we spoke about that last night on the Sunday night show. Kieran Trippier has been mentioned by David Ornstein as an option, as a backup for the backup for get my words out. Backup for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. We don't want Kieran Trippier as a backup goalkeeper. As a backup for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Now, I've been saying this for a few weeks now, and obviously it started off around January time. I really do think Kieran Trippier will be at Manchester United this summer. I don't do percentages anymore. Somebody asked me, can you do a hotometer in the morning about transfers? I would say at the moment, if I was ranking Manchester United's top 3 most likely, and you can clip this if you want, Manchester United's top 3 most likely transfers this summer, I would put Sancho in there. Not in any order. I would put Sancho in there. I would put Trippier in there. And the third one is really, really hard, but I could cheat and put Tom Heaton in there, but he's a free transfer, so I'm not going to put in him, and it's not exciting. So I would say Sancho, Trippier, and it's really hard. I don't think we're going to get a CDM. We will get a centre back. I would say Sancho, Trippier, and I want to say Varane, but that's just speculative. So I will say I'm going to say Koundé. Yeah, I'll say Koundé. So we'll see. Pau Torres would have been a good one for Mohamed. But I really do think we will end up getting Kieran Trippier, because he wants to come back from Spain. He's still, I think he's 30, 31. I think he'd be available for 15 million. A lot of people say Mings in the live chat. So I've spoken about this petition once. If you're watching the show, then you already know what I've had to say about that. Why asking me to keep going on about something that I've just explained to you that I don't know anything about, we weren't asked to be part of, so I can't really start speaking about something. But we did the 50+1 one on this channel, which you got over to 100,000, which is great. And to me, I would question why all these people who are behind this regulator didn't get behind the 50+1, because the 50+1 is the one that will potentially get the Glazers out of Manchester United, which is most important. But look, the positive for me is that people are doing lots and lots of things. And all I ever say is unity is important. And I'm not convinced that we have got unity, because to me it still sounds like we've quite clearly still got politics around, well, we're not going to work with them, which I think is a shame. But I do think Trippier will end up at Manchester United because it makes sense. And I think he'd be available for about 15 million. And I do think Trippier as a backup right back to Wan-Bissaka would work quite well in the way that Telles has worked, an experienced left back, and Trippier is an experienced right back as well. And I think he would push Wan-Bissaka to the next level. I mean, some would say he might push Wan-Bissaka out the team. Well, you never know. Telles could have pushed Luke Shaw out the team, but it didn't. He pushed Luke Shaw to another level. So I definitely think Wan-Bissaka will benefit, because if you think about it, Luke Shaw's candidate for Player of the Year this year. and Telles can't get a look in. But Luke Shaw knows if he drops off, Telles will take his place, and he's known that all season. Wan-Bissaka, I think, has had a reasonably good season, but he's not had any competition. And I think if he had a Trippier behind him all season, then that would benefit him. Michael says government involvement in football is only going to turn to misery long term. Fans already have the power and don't need it, says Michael. And we are one of the worst teams in terms of conceding goals through set pieces, says Subbo. That's down to Ollie, Carricky and their coaching. How do we come around that, says Subbo. Well, you know what, you say that, but then you look at, I'm only using one goal as an example here, but you look at the look at the Everton equaliser a few months ago. 3-2 into the last minute. Harry Maguire inexplicably plays a high line and gets everybody on, plays a low line and keeps everyone on side. If you look at the goal against Liverpool on Thursday last week, where Pogba, Firmino, it's a straight fight for the ball. The defender always should win that. It should always be harder for the attacker to win a header, and Pogba doesn't deal with it. So it doesn't matter how. Look, I've been a coach. I'm sure many of you have been coached. You can coach people. You can coach 5 times a week about passing in triangles, pass and move, use the ball, and then watch them on Saturday and they don't do it. Like, if it was all about coaching, then nobody'd ever have any problems. It's about the players, individual players as well, and their mentality. The best coach in the world won't be able to get the best thing out of players that aren't good enough. And I'm not saying that Pogba's not good enough or Harry Maguire's not good enough, but we've also made a lot of individual mistakes this season. If you think about St. Maximin or James Rodriguez, the goals they scored at Old Trafford in the box, they should be being picked up by the midfield. Time and time again, we don't win the second ball. So I think coaching can only take you so far. I think some of the goals we've conceded this season are actually more about individual errors as well. So we spoke about that. Trippier as well. Romano's spoken about that, and we've spoken about Haaland. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will be doing a press conference today for the game against Fulham. I feel like it's moving into a bit of a weird stage now, because we've got Fulham tomorrow, Wolves on Sunday, and then obviously a week on Wednesday is the Europa League final. We're starting to hit a point where transfers are obviously going to get mentioned a lot, but my understanding is, and please correct me in the live comments if you want to, my understanding is that we will not have, the transfer window doesn't actually open until June. Ferran Torres is better than Greenwood and Rashford, and Sancho's overrated, says Legend Sweet. Well, look, if you're a Man City fan, I almost feel sorry for you, and you've won a league title this weekend. You're absolutely brilliant, but you're on a United fan channel. Like, do you not have anywhere to go? Like, you just wander around like you're lost. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I hear all about this Ferran Torres thing, and I just think, are you not indicative of the flip-flop nature of the modern football fan, where I didn't even know who Ferran Torres was. I know Man City bought him. I've hardly noticed him all season. He scores some goals on Friday night, and suddenly he's better than Greenwood. And I'm like, I've never heard of this lad. Foden's had a very good season. I've heard of him. Cancelo's had a good season. Gundogan's had a good season. I've heard of these players. I've not heard of Ferran Torres all bloody season until Friday, where he bangs a few goals in against Newcastle, and suddenly he's the best player in the world. I'm like, look, do people not judge players over a few games now? We get it in the same with Man United and Van der Beek. He has one bad game and he's a load of shit. And it's like, well, I've watched Van der Beek. I've not watched Van der Beek play as much as I would like to see Van der Beek play this season, but when I've watched Van der Beek, I'd say 90% of the time he's actually been very, very good. But people react to things like, oh, Ferran Torres is the best. He played brilliantly against Newcastle. Where's he been all season? I've hardly noticed the lad. I've never heard of him. Maybe he has played well all season, but I tell you what, he needs to get a better agent, because I've not heard anything about him until Friday night. So there you go. He's very talented, says BG. Well, maybe he is very talented, but he needs a better commercial director or whatever, because I've never heard anything about him until Friday night. I know who he is, but I've never heard. I mean, in fact, I've watched him play a couple of games, and I'm like, he's been took off after an hour. So it just makes me laugh how these players are suddenly the best thing since sliced bread because they scored a few goals against Newcastle, and I barely noticed them. Mark, if Telles has pushed Shaw to his prime, why isn't Ollie thinking the same for McFred, says Manish? Well, we come back to the same old problem we always have. I would love to be talking to you this morning about, we're talking about a centre-back, we're talking about, we're even talking about a striker again, aren't we? But we're never talking about a midfielder, and I don't know. I'm really concerned about this. It's the most over-discussed topic at the moment. I think it's become more prevalent than the centre-back situation at United, which we know we need a centre-back, and the club clearly know we need a centre-back. We're scouting a lot of centre-backs. You know, Romano's confirmed that this morning. We are scouting Romero, we are scouting Botman, but they're not the priorities, which means we're scouting a lot of centre-backs. But what's going on in that midfield area? It's the biggest hole in the team. The scary thing is 2 people playing there. It's not like, you know, we've got Maguire and we need another centre-back. That's 1 player we need. In the midfield, you could argue we need 2. Well, there's nothing. It's just a void. There's nothing being mentioned. I mean, to be honest with you, the scary thing about the centre defensive midfield position is that the only noise is fans throwing up their things. I mean, when have we legitimately been linked to Declan Rice? We admire Declan Rice as a football club, but I'm sure a lot of people do. Where is the genuine chat about Declan Rice? And as I said, I know people in the industry, and Declan Rice is Chelsea. He's a Chelsea boy. He wants to go to Chelsea. So I don't know where this is coming from about, well, we all know we need a midfielder, but there's nothing. There is nothing out there. You speak to whoever you want. Like, nobody will say, well, United are definitely looking for a midfielder, let alone being linked to anybody. Everybody we're linked to is because of you. Oh, Zakaria would be good. Basuma would be brilliant. Oh, Declan Rice, he'd be great. Ndidi, he'd be great. But we're not legitimately linked. And the scary thing about transfers is you don't just sit here in the back end of May and go, you know what? We do need a CDM. Let's start having a look. You've got to be talking to them. And if United are talking to somebody, then you normally know about it, because we leak like a sieve. So it's worrying around the midfield. And what's more worrying is it, would you take Kimpembe from PSG? He's left-footed and fast. I'm not massive about him, Jack, to be honest. I think he's a good player, but I'm not over the moon with him. But the worrying thing about the midfield is, and this, I suppose there's 2 main scenarios here. One, are we not buying a midfielder because Ollie doesn't want one and he's happy with McFred and whatever, which is very, very worrying? Or are we not buying a midfielder because basically he's been told, you've only got this much money, and he said, well, I want Sancho and a centre-back then? Which is even worse, isn't it? You know, he wants a midfielder, but it's like, I need a centre-back and a right winger. I've got to prioritise what I need. And that is the most scary thing. Maybe we're not looking for a midfielder, not because we don't need one, but because he's had to prioritise a right winger and a centre-back first, which I think is a mistake. I think the priority should be the midfield, but I'm really hoping that this is just a bit quiet for United and that we will be getting the midfielder, but at the moment it's worryingly quiet. Michael says, being ruthless, can you do a show on which players you would keep in the current squad? I'd struggle to keep 12, says Michael. And thanks for the sticker, Renate. Sancho going United. He's just BTEC, Ferran Torres and Sancho. Oh, okay. We're going to ignore the City fan now, because one thing I will say is Super Chats, thank you very much for them, but we will not let idiots just run the show. We've already got one. Mark, why you got your name on your hoodie? You all think you all that. Because I've got sent it, mate. What do you want me to do? Wipe my arse with it? I got sent it by Lyle and Scott, and I like it, so I wear it. And this is my name. That's who's running the show. So, God, it's Monday morning. You can tell. You know what? If you're waking up on a Monday morning in a bad mood, go and have a look in the mirror and have a think about why you're in a bad mood. Because you're masters of your own destiny. If you don't like your job and you're not happy, don't take it out on other people. Go and sort it out yourselves. It's true, Man United makes contact with Sporting Lisbon's $52 million deal left back Nuno Menendez, and the Man City target has the same agent as Bruno Fernandes, says Man United News Now. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for bringing that in. I wasn't going to mention it on the show, but it has been mentioned this morning again that United have been linked to Sporting Lisbon left back Nuno Mendes. Many of you will know about this because we've been linked to Nuno Mendes quite regularly over the last 6 months. Now, look, it's a news show, so we should bring it in. I apologise, I should have brought it in. But the reality is, there's no logic to it. There's no logic to it. It's sort of a bit like the Harry Kane story that we started off with. There's no logic to it. Why would we spend 50 million on Nuno Mendes? We've got one of the best left-backs in the world at the moment. And look, even I say that and think, oh, I'm going to get slated. They're going to clip it. But honestly, we have got one of the best left-backs in the world, haven't we? Is Luke Shaw in the top 5 left-backs in the world at the moment? Yes, he is. Yes, he is. I'm not going to say he's the best, but he's definitely in the top 5. Therefore, we've got one of the best left-backs in the world. Why would we spend £50 million on Mendes from Sporting Lisbon? And also, we've got Telles. So we're not going to do, they can link that story however they want. And the Portuguese press, to be fair, is It's why the Bruno story took a long time to sort of catch hold, because it's like you can get linked to players in Portugal that never happen. What was that midfielder? Used to get linked to us and Arsenal all the time, and he's actually not that bad. And I can picture his name, but I can't remember what his name is. I can picture his face, but I can't remember his name. We always used to get linked to him. Somebody in the live cam on it will get it. But yeah, look. If we were Man City, maybe I'd go, well, maybe we are looking at him, buying 3 left backs. Man City, buy goalkeepers all the time and right backs, don't they? But United aren't going to spend 50 million on a left back when we need a striker, a right winger, a CDM, a centre back, a backup right back. At this stage, I would take any player in CDM and centre back. At least it would be different names in the team, and I don't want to have to look at McFred and Magaluf to Smart Derby. Well, William Carvalho, that was his name, wasn't it? Yeah. We were linked to him for ages. Gayton was another one as well, says Athith. Banter from a club that had dozens of fans celebrating their title win. Only team that has been effectively the lack of fans, says Rob the Red. Well, look, that's a good point, actually. Fans back in the ground tomorrow. Ollie's been talking about that. And quite good what he said, actually. He said, look, he said you could argue that we are the one club that's missed out having fans more than anybody else. Now, I mean, how do you argue that? I mean, look at Liverpool. They lost 3 or 4 games in a row at Anfield. I never in a million years would they have lost those 4 games at Anfield with a full crowd there. But I think United, I don't think we would have lost to Sheffield United in January. We would not have lost that game. I mean, did Martial play the full 90 in that game? He would have been subbed off after an hour. I mean, fans do make a big difference on a game. Like, I'm sure most people have been to Old Trafford. If you've not been to Old Trafford, I'm sure you've been to many other games as well. And fans do have an impact. Like, there's no way United would have been allowed to play that badly against Sheffield United at home for as long as they did. So fans do have an impact. Having said that, excuse me, a bit tired this morning. Having said that, think about some of the games that we've won away from home from being behind at half time. Would we have come back at Southampton 2-0 down at half time with a full crowd there? So the impact is, we've definitely missed our fans, and I think football without the fans is not the same. But Mark, we need a centre back like De Ligt, a leader, young, has speed. We don't need a CDM. Don't be deluded. Sancho will be a flop as well, like Sanchez. Come on, Mark. Marco, I think you're talking out your arse. The minute you said De Ligt has speed, you lost me. We wouldn't be making as many comebacks away from home, says Ryan. Well, look, it swings and roundabouts. I think there was a very good comment from somebody, I think it was last week, saying that, look at all the points we've, the points we've dropped this season. If we just turn them into wins, we'd be in a title race, because we're only 10 points off City or something like that. And I was saying, you raise a good point, but also think about all the games that we've won. We've taken 3 points that could have been 1 point. I mean, I think about that Villa game at Christmas, where Bay blocked it. Then we went to Fulham, and I think it hit Mitrovic's header hit Bay and just went the wrong side of the post. We took 6 points. We could have took 2, and there are others. I think I don't think we need to over analyze this season really. I think I could summarise this season quite easily in the fact that we've had a good season. We've overachieved. Ollie's done really well when you think that he didn't get what he wanted last summer. Yes, Chelsea have had a weird season. Liverpool have had a weird season. But look, we could have had a weird season. I think the only real consistent side that has deservedly win the title is City. To be best of the rest, I mean, look, you're still second place. It's still the first loser. But for us, I still would go back to what I said at the start of the season, that I didn't think that was achievable. So I think we've overachieved. I think at times we've played good football. I think at times we've played bad football. And I think what I would say about this season is you've got to win that Europa League. You've got to come out of this season with a trophy. And if you don't come out of this season without a trophy, you're a bit like Mourinho when he came second, where it's like, wow, you did come second, but there's you were a long way off City, this, that and the other, and there's still a long way to go to first. And then lo and behold, the following season, Mourinho's gone by Christmas. So I think next season is precarious for Ollie if we don't win the Europa League. I think if we win the Europa League, there will be some... I do believe United will go up a level mentally if they win this trophy, because it will just give them that belief, So it's very, very big for us to do that. But I still would say that next season's going to be very interesting, because if Chelsea become more consistent and Liverpool bounce back, then suddenly second place becomes very, very difficult. And we need to show that ambition. I mean, we shouldn't be going into next season thinking, well, if Chelsea are better and Liverpool are better, it's going to be a real battle to get second. obviously we're talking about Glazers again, because we shouldn't be talking like that. We should be talking about how do we get close to City. But the sad thing is, as fans, I think we already know that with these owners, that's not really the conversation. Because I know, and you know, if I said to you as the owner of Man United and you were the manager, and I said to you, right, very well done, how do we get you close to City? You're going to say, well, top quality CDM, top quality centre back, Sancho. That's the start straight away, and clear me some of the deadwood. Well, are we going to do those three things? And that's to close the gap. Has no one considered that Ollie's priority was Europa League, therefore switched De Gea and gave Henderson a chance to prove himself in the Premier League? Since we then had a gap, I think De Gea will play in the final. Says Lay. I really hope he does play in the final. Mark Dobby says, I'm hoping fans will help Ollie make his subs at the right time, jeering players who aren't in it, the games. Says Mark Dobby. And what if we shelled 100 million on a CDM and centre back? We could have Ahmed and Greenwood prosper on the right. I would love to see Manchester United buy a centre back and a CDM this summer. A top quality two players. I think we will sign Sancho, but I think those two players are more important. What do you think of Marcus Llorente from Atletico Madrid? Says Chris. I mean, look. Self-professed, haven't watched La Liga a lot this season, but I do know who Llorente is, and to me, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, Atletico Madrid can be quite a defensive side, so I don't think you'd have any problems with Llorente playing in that pivot. But could he play the role that we need? I mean, I think that we're not going to buy two midfielders. If you were going to buy Bissouma and Llorente, you'd be fine because they can both do that together. But I think United are going to have to buy a player that can do it on their own so that you can play a Pogba next to them or a Van der Beek next to them. Therefore, you need a specialist centre defensive midfielder. You need a Declan Rice type player. Is Llorente a CDM, a specialist CDM? Now, I put that question mark out there. When I've seen him, and I haven't seen a lot of him this season, I think of him more as a box-to-box player. But, some people might say, no, he can play that position. That's his position. I mean, Kimmich would be ideal, George Kyle. Of course he would. But, Casemiro would be great. And Didi would be great. But I don't think that... I don't think... And also, Llorente would be very, very, very expensive. And I think for the price that you'd pay for Llorente, you could probably get somebody a bit different. People are saying he can play there. He's box to box. Would you consider Renato Sanchez in a CDM role? Says Randy. Another player who's had a good season. Sabitza's mentioned. Don't ever say Sabitza's a CDM, even though I think he can play in that pivot too. That got him into a lot of trouble last time. Manuel says that Declan Rice isn't a specialist CDM. Well, Manuel, I'm sorry, I totally disagree because I've seen West Ham play a lot this season and Declan Rice is always the deeper of the midfield too, and Soucek has scored a lot of goals because he's got licence to go forward. Declan Rice doesn't score many goals because he doesn't go forward. He's the sitter in the two. He's the Jorginho in the, that's what he does. If Chelsea sell Jorginho, they will bring Declan Rice in. That's where he will play. He's the deeper of the two. For me, he's absolutely obviously a CDM. Sanchez is box to box, says Annie. Get your questions in then. Manchester United winger Daniel James has announced he's become a dad, says Felix. I didn't even know he was... Well, why would I know? It's got nothing to do with me. But well done, Daniel James. Rice holds for England as well, says George Kyle. How about Idrissa Gueye from PSG, says Makish. He's a good player. Verratti would be fantastic as well. Look, there's loads of players out there. I mean, Idrissa Gueye is getting on a bit now. I think he's about 31, isn't he? Who do you think our front three is if we get Sancho? There could be many different combinations. Rashi, Tony, Sancho would be perfect, says John O'Kane. Well, if you brought Sancho in, John, you'd have lots of... I think when you look at Rashford this season, he's been overplayed, hasn't he? I mean, technically, you could make a case that Rashford might not start the final because what if he puts Pogba on the... He'll play McFred, he'll play Bruno. What if he puts Pogba on the left, Greenwood on the right and Cavani up the front? Because I don't think Rashford off the right is actually as good as he is off the left. So if you think about next season, if you've got Greenwood, Sancho, Martial, Cavani, Rashford, that's five very good players for three spots. And you can also put a Paul Pogba in there as well. So Yeah, I think that, but maybe if we get Sancho, Martial goes. I don't know, but I think having quality is in depth in the front three positions is important because Martial's been out a lot. He's been out of form a lot this season. Cavani's had his injury problems. Greenwood started the season off a bit slow, and Rashford's just had to be overused all season. Zach says, "Do you think we should sell Martial?" No, I don't. I think if Anthony Martial is happy to be competing for those three front positions, and the amount of games we're going to play next season, hopefully we can do better in the Champions League next year, whilst also being as good as we've been in the league. Then you're going to need to rotate players. There's a lot of games to play, and I wouldn't sell Martial. What I would do is if Martial, I've said this before, if Martial goes into the manager's office and says I want to go, then you don't want to be keeping players that don't want to be here because he's not hungry. You could, with Martial, do a swap deal. We talk about Lingard swap. I still think that Martial could be used in a swap deal because I could see Martial at Juventus. I could see him at PSG. I could see him at Sevilla. I could even see him at Real Madrid. So look, I'm not saying Real Madrid would want him. I'm not saying PSG would want him, but I could see him there. And I mention those clubs because Sevilla is Koundé. PSG, there are players there that you would want. Real Madrid is Varane. Juventus, Ronaldo. So, they're not going to happen, but I do think if Martial went in and said, I want to go, if I was United, I wouldn't be taking cash for him because I do think that Martial a year ago, as Player of the Year in the Premier League with fans in the ground, he was a 60, 70 million pound player. I think right now, if you tried to sell him, you'd struggle to get 40 million. And remember, he's on a massive contract. It's not like he's got a year left on his contract. So I think if you were going to let Martial go, you'd have to make it an appealing deal because people would say we've lost loads of money on him. He's one of our best earners as well. Would you try Bailly as a CDM if Glazers are tight? No. God, no. Eric Bailly is a CDM. He's not good enough on the ball. Do we have a song for Phil Jones like Eddie? No, I don't know. There might be a Phil Jones song, Subo. I'm sure there is a Phil Jones song. We've probably just wiped it from our memory. Would you have taken Caicedo back in January, says Randy? I don't think Caicedo has done particularly well at Brighton, to be fair. But the thing I would say about that is, if he's scouted well, then we should have took him. And who's to say that next season at Brighton, he won't be a really good player? Maybe they're just, he's only been in the Premier League 4 months, and I think he plays for the under-23s. So he's not set the world on fire yet, but it doesn't mean he's going to be a flop. Not every player is going to come in and do fantastically well straight away. Hopefully Diallo and Pellistri will be really good players for United, but obviously they've been at the club. Pellestri's nearly been here for a year. Diallo has been here for like 6 months, and at the moment you don't know who they are. So look, Fred, I know that's a bad example, but you want these players to do well. We must keep Martial, says Nito, and I think Ollie's press conference is at 1:00, so we'll have a reaction to that at 1:30, and I'll combine that with the preview as well because I need to do the preview for the Fulham game tomorrow. But I would agree. I saw Alex, who does the fan forum on this channel, he was saying this morning on Twitter that he'd like to see a strong team against Fulham and then a reserve team against Wolves, so that they're very fresh. They have a week. Don't know whether Ollie will do that. I think Ollie's tendency will be to pick a strong team tonight because it's Tuesday and then there's a big gap till Sunday, so pick a strong team again and then play Wednesday as well. So I don't know whether he'll do that, but I do think that we need to go quite strong against Fulham. Second place isn't really in jeopardy. We've got second place even if we lose the next two. But I'd love to see United get 76 points because I said at the start of the season, for me, it's about points accrual. I mean, second place is great, but it's about points accrual. If we can go from 66 points last year to 76 points this year, it's a 10-point swing, isn't it? And then you set that bar for next year. I want the bar to be high because next year, if we finish fourth with 64 points, that's a massive drop-off. And you're like, oh, we're on the decline. So let's win these last two games. But I on the goalkeeping situation, I expect David De Gea to start the final. Therefore, I expect him to start tomorrow. I think Henderson will start against Wolves, or the other way around. But I do expect De Gea to get a start in the next two games. Otherwise, he hasn't played since the Roma game. Theo says, has anyone thought about the fact that Ollie is prioritising a right winger so he can reposition Pogba at CDM? I think Pogba can only play at CDM, Theo, if he's got a proper CDM next to him. And I'm not even talking CDM because he'd be a box-to-box player. United play 4-2-3-1 under Ollie. What he wants to do is have a holding midfielder and a player next to them who gets forward more. If you think about the first 3 months of Ollie, it was Matic, Herrera. And Herrera sort of was defensive, but also got forward a bit. If you think about us last summer, it was Matic, Pogba, and Pogba had license to get forward more. And obviously got the attacking player in Bruno. So I think that Ollie needs a holding midfielder. And I think he has been hamstrung this year. Anyway, look, we are going to be back at lunchtime with a reaction to the press conference for Ollie and a preview for the Fulham game. Thanks everyone for watching. Please smash a like on the video. Really enjoyed the Sunday show last night if you haven't checked that out. And make sure you subscribe if you're new, bottom right hand corner. And we'll speak to you at lunchtime for the Fulham press conference reaction from Ollie. And hopefully he's going to start getting asked some questions about transfer.